Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Is Luis King Kong Ortiz being lowballed by Eddie Hearn, Anthony Joshua's promoter? King Kong Ortiz is the first choice replacement for Joshua after Jarrell Big Pharmacy Miller failed multiple doping tests, putting an end to his shot at Joshua on June 1st in New York. So we didn't really know what the offers were, but it has emerged on BoxingScene.com. Reportedly, Luis Ortiz has been offered $5 million to fight Anthony Joshua, and it may have been less with the first offer. Apparently $5 million is where the offer stands right now. So is that a lowball offer? So we'll go through some of the information just for some context. So Luis Ortiz's manager, Jay Jimenez, posted the original post saying that he was told to stay quiet. It was a gimmick. They didn't really want to fight him. Lowball offers, that sort of thing. And then there was an article on BoxingScene.com. Jorge Carmenate of Dade Promotions told Boxing Scene, after 5 days of BS, we declined all of Hearn's lowball offers and we are tired of his games. I know the magnitude of this fight. I wasn't going to let Hearn bully me, especially when I know they need Luis. I mean, who else could they really have to fight and the public was willing to pay for? Listen, I like Joshua. I want to continue to do good, but I don't see eye to eye with Hearn. He's a cheat. I'm done with him. Hearn is a joke. Go take advantage of some other fighter on short notice. I'm done with the games. My fighter is a top 3 heavyweight. Treat him like one. With Al Heyman, I never have these money issues. He knows how to treat people fair. That was Jorge Carmenate of Dade Promotions. So he's obviously been the one on behalf of Jay Jimenez and Luis Ortiz who has been negotiating with Eddie Hearn. So we know that there's a pretty big pot of money for this fight, somewhere around $40 million. Joshua was set to get about $32 million, and Jarrell Big Pharmacy Miller was reported to get somewhere between $6.5 and $7 million, somewhere around that ballpark. Some of that would have been directly from DAZN, with the rest coming from Sky Sports box office pay-per-view, the upside from the pay-per-view. Now, with that in mind, $5 million, which is less than what Jarrell Big Pharmacy Miller was going to get, is that actually a fair offer to Luis Ortiz? And there's some other things to take into context here. Luis Ortiz does not currently have a fight signed. There is a potential rematch with Deontay Wilder down the line. His highest payday is $500,000, so already you'd be talking about a tenfold increase on his highest payday, but it would be less than Jarrell Miller was going to be offered. And Eddie Hearn had said after the whole Jarrell Big Pharmacy Miller fight had fallen through that there was a pot of money available and would kind of be on a sliding scale depending on the opponent. So if there was someone who was of the same caliber as Miller, they could roughly expect probably somewhere around the same amount. But if it was someone with a lower profile, someone who wasn't necessarily of the same caliber and quality of opponent, then they probably wouldn't be able to expect the same result. And many would say that Luis Ortiz is at least on a par, if not better than Jarrell Miller, that it would be a slight upgrade in opponent. Obviously, the trash-talking side, the promotion side of the coin, Luis Ortiz doesn't really bring much to the actual party, whereas Jarrell Miller is a walking, radio, just can't stop talking trash, all that sort of stuff. Some of that has actually ended up sort of counting against Miller to some extent, given what's happened and some of the statements that he did make in the build-up to what would have been a June 1st fight with Joshua. So the question is, Luis Ortiz, what is fair for him? And there's another story that emerged on Boxing Scene that reports that reportedly Ortiz's team asked for $10 million. Roughly $3.5 million more than what would have been Miller's package for the fight had the boisterous Brooklyn contender, yada, yada, yada. So $10 million is what Luis Ortiz is asking for. This is what is being reported now. He has been offered $5, and it is expected that Hearn is expected to make a counter offer to Ortiz before finalizing the deal for Miller's replacement. Now, $5 million is the offer. This has been reported by multiple sources to Boxing Scene. $10 million is the asking price. I guess you have to ask the question, do they just pull the trigger on that and go, okay, one, do we just give them whatever Jarrell Miller's package was, but even then that may not be enough, or do they cede to Team Ortiz's demands and go, okay, $10 million. roughly the fighting pot is already about $40 million US for this fight. It's a huge amount of money, especially when DAZN is, with its subscriber base, is going to be losing money hand over fist on this. They are spending into the market right now with these huge sums of monies trying to build a subscriber base for the long term. They're probably not going to be making profit for a number of years. It's this early sort of startup phase where they're spending into it, trying to grow their market share, and over time they will recoup what they're spending now. And you have to ask yourselves, is this sustainable? But in this case, with a pot of about $40 million, and if you add another $2 or $3 million on top, if they were to actually meet Ortiz's demand of $10 million to take this fight, is it really, in the scheme of things, going to break the bank? Because there's a huge amount of money already being spent, and what's another $2 or $3 million? And in a sense, Luis Ortiz's team, they know that without Luis Ortiz, there is a considerable drop-off to the likes of a Michael Hunter or Andy Ruiz Jr. Both very good heavyweights, but they're not really in the same class at this point, regarded by fans, as Luis Ortiz. Ortiz is generally regarded as a guy who's around the top 5 or so of the division. The guy who was speaking before was saying top 3. Maybe that's a little optimistic because Joshua, Tyson Fury, and Deontay Wilder, depending on whatever order you rank them in, generally would be considered the top 3. And after that, there is a number of guys like Ortiz, Povetkin, Dillian Whyte, that was sort of in the next 3 or 4 places. So Luis Ortiz is pretty much the best of an available bunch in terms of an opponent. So that's why they have to actually ask themselves, do we just pay this extra and get this fight done? Or do they just throw up an offer that was similar to Miller's package, exactly the same as Miller's package, and hope that it gets a deal done? Because maybe they're asking for $10 million, expecting at least to get the same as what Miller was getting. Or maybe it's not going to matter whatever ends up getting offered. They're throwing out a figure that knowing that won't be matched. And there would be some who would say that even if it was matched, Luis Ortiz probably wouldn't want to take the fight. I think this is the best available option right now for Anthony Joshua in terms of an opponent for this US debut. There's a lot hinging on this first fight for Anthony Joshua. Remember, he was meant to be having a Wembley date in April. They were going through the list of opponents, couldn't get Wilder, couldn't get Fury, Dillian Whyte dropped out, Jarrell Big Pharmacy Miller has now dropped out because of the doping. So it kind of has been going from bad to worse. They had to switch to the United States, decided that was the time to make that first fight in the United States for Joshua, and obviously it's kind of all gone pear-shaped. So is it worth spending the extra money? But some of that may not be up to Eddie Hearn here. Obviously, DAZN is the one funding this, and they're already putting up a massive chunk of change. But Joshua is fighting regardless. So is it just worth spending the extra money? But do you believe that $5 million, 10 times Luis Ortiz's payday, is actually a lowball offer? His spokesperson in this other story here, so Jorge Carmenate of Dade Promotions, said he'd never had these money issues with Al Heyman. He knows how to treat people fair. Well, to be fair to Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua, Luis Ortiz is being offered 10 times the amount Luis Ortiz has ever been paid for one fight. It probably is more than he's earned in his entire career combined. He got $500,000 for the fight with Deontay Wilder, which when you do the calculations, because Wilder got $2.1 million, it was actually less than 20% of the pot. And in his most recent fight, he got about $300,000 for fighting Christian Hammer. So it's not like Al Heyman has actually been paying Luis Ortiz massive amounts of money. But in this situation where Ortiz is likely to be a potential next fight for Deontay Wilder, a rematch if he gets past Dominic Breazeale on May 18th, I can kind of see why they would want to, really push for the jugular. And you have this other compounding factor that Joshua needs what seemed to be a credible opponent for his first fight in the United States. So Luis Ortiz and his team have got some leverage here. But $5 million, in my view, it's not a lowball offer. I don't think it is at all, especially when you're talking about multi-millions of dollars. But is it enough to get a deal done? Apparently not. Should he be offered something at least what Jarrell Miller was getting? Well, I think so. I think that would, something on a par. And I had seen a lot of sentiments just sort of, online saying Jarrell Miller, his offer should just be given to Luis Ortiz to try and get him over the line. But that may not be enough. If they're asking for $10 million, maybe they think that they can sort of push for more than Jarrell Miller was getting. Obviously, that's what they're trying to get. Will they get $10 million? It's hard to say. But if that is the hard line in the sand there is something to think about, because it's already a huge amount being invested in this fight. An extra couple of $1 million on what would have already been a pretty massive pot anyway. In the scheme of things, is it going to make a big difference? But you have to consider these other issues. If Luis Ortiz is not going to be an opponent for Deontay Wilder later in the year, potentially, because, say, he fights Joshua and he loses, that's someone that wouldn't be available to fight Wilder. And then the actual pool of opponents, because Ortiz is now a PBC fighter, the pool of opponents for Wilder gets a bit smaller, because at the moment it's looking like Deontay Wilder's next fights, if an undisputed fight with Joshua can't be made, is an Ortiz rematch and then Adam Kovnatsky, or Kovnatsky first and then Ortiz. So there is a pipeline. So if you're taking one of these guys out of it, then obviously they're trying to get maximum effort, because why would Al Heyman want to sell off one of his top fighters, heavyweights, cheaply? And obviously they're trying to go for the jugular here, $10 million. Will they get that? I don't know. It's hard to say. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.